Dear Foundationers, I wrote to you back in July saying that because of the uncertainty surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic and the need for everyone to be careful, we would not be holding our normal annual commemoration in October. That was, and still is, a pity, as we must continue to celebrate Thomas Martyn's generous bequest in his will, following his rescue about 1630 by the local Putney waterman after his falling in the Thames around here. The celebration would have started with our normal short service at St Mary's, Putney, a short walk down the riverbank to London Rowing Club, to the main celebration at the club. There, we had an opportunity to meet up with you all and to find out how you were getting on. Some of you may even recognise yourselves in this previous occasion, but this time we had to be careful. We did not want you or your families to catch this nasty disease, or even to go into quarantine, particularly in the run-up to Christmas. As your governors of the Thomas Martyn Foundation, we still want to keep in touch with you and your families, and to do this, we thought it might be a good idea, and even a bit of fun, to make a little video for you to go out with our Christmas card. To do this, we thought it would be appropriate to tell you again the Thomas Martyn story as best we can through this video. Many of you probably know it already. This video, we hope, though, can bring this story alive and to bring it up to date. Thomas Martyn lived in Putney in the 1600s. That is nearly 400 years ago. He had a house just off Wandsworth Park called Copt Hall. It must have been quite a substantial house, as it has its own private steps down to the river and his own landing stage. Now I think we have located it on this old map of Putney. Wandsworth Park is almost off the map at the bottom, and the Thames is on the right, and we have just arrived at the river as shown by the red arrow. Now let us zoom in onto the patch of land called Copt Shot, in which there is a letter Q. Look at the list on the right hand side and you can just make out Q, Mr. Thomas. Have a look at this rather strange bird's eye painting of the Thames. Putney, below the old bridge, is at the top, and Fulham, upside down, is at the bottom. Now let's hear from one of your governors, Martyn Botting.
His view of the river traffic must have been something like this old painting. He would have probably have seen skiffs, sailing barges and tilt boats, which were the large open wherries with tents on covering the cargo, the forerunners of the bigger barges up to 40 tons, which were known as punts. I'm building a model of a waterman's skiff. These were the taxis of London before the bridges were built, and it is in a boat similar to this that Thomas Martyn had his life saved by a Putney waterman. Let's have a look at that old painting again. You'll see in the top left coaches and horses being rowed across on a pontoon. That facility only operated from Monday to Saturday. On Sundays, those wishing to cross had to use the passenger wherry, which you can see in the bottom right of the picture. I don't know if Putney had a horse ferry. I know there was one at Lambeth, hence Horseferry Road. The old Putney Bridge was a toll bridge, and the watermen made a living as their fare was less than that of the toll charged. The original Putney ferry ran from a causeway on the south side. There was a small wooden hut where the watermen could shelter when they weren't employed in rowing. Looking across from Fulham to Putney, we see the famous Putney boat houses. A new ferry was established in the early 1900s to connect Putney to the then new extended pleasure gardens of Bishop's Park. Here are the ferry steps and the causeway. When the bridge was freed from tolls, the watermen of the parish lost their living. They were allowed a pension from the Bridge House Trust of 1 shilling per annum. If you rode the ferry or any other waterman plying for hire, they had to pay a levy to the Waterman's Company, and on Sundays they had to have written permission to go to work, but they paid a smaller levy.
Here is a painting of one of those old wherries. Actually, it may have looked much more like this. Brian Gilbert Denham takes up the story.
I think you'll agree that Thomas Martyn must have been very happy and thankful to these men. Anyway, Thomas Martyn went on to be successful as a merchant, possibly in the city of London, but this is pure guesswork. The rescue must have been in his mind when he made his will in 1684. He directed that his niece Lucy Cook should receive the income from his estate in her lifetime, but if she died without having any children, he directed that all his money should be used to set up and run a school for the children of the local watermen of Putney first, and then the children of Barnes, Fulham and Wandsworth to be included where possible. For you see, in those days, there was no education for any children except through foundations such as this. Notice that word foundation. This is why we call you foundations.
The niece did die in year 1701 without any children of her own, and the first waterman's school, as it was called, was built and established in 1718. If we walk back up Wandsworth Park, away from the river, from this view of where Thomas Martyn's house could have been, and turn right along Putney Bridge Road to the junction with Oxford Road, the new school, Southfield House, would have been here.
It was a substantial house containing a master, servants and 20 scholars. The children each were taught writing, reading, and if they were good enough, mathematics. In fact, the old 3 R's, which weren't 3 R's, as of course you know only too well.
They were also provided, once a year, with a new uniform of shoes, cap and a grey coat edged in red, and a belt to go with it. Here is a painting of a foundationer painted in 1826. Now here is a very cold-looking chap, probably a foundationer by his clothes, at Putney when the Thames froze over in the winter of 1880 to 1881.
When you first became a foundationer, you were given, amongst other things, and hopefully you've still got it, this little lapel badge. If you look at it carefully, you'll see the whole Thomas Martyn story depicted in it. You'll see the initials of TM for Thomas Martyn, rescued, the lifebelt around the outside. The initial F on the right is for foundation. And 1684, that's the year that the foundation was set up. In the middle is your predecessor's book for learning of reading and writing, and mathematics at a later stage, if you got that far.
I'm afraid the school, or shall I say schools, seemed always to be in the wrong place. In 1887, Southfield's house was knocked down to make way for the new railway across the Thames to Wimbledon, which we know today as the District Line. This was built about where the bridge carrying the water pipe across the river on the right-hand side of this picture. The school then moved temporarily to Putney Bridge Road and then to a new building in 1899 to a corner plot between 1 Windsor Street and 1 River Street, probably in this block of flats on the right of this picture. The corner plot was opposite the current Star and Garter pub, just to the left of this old engraving of the foreshore. However, the address was changed to 19 Lower Richmond Road when the current new Putney Bridge approach was built. While we're talking about the new Putney Bridge, here are 3 photographs taken from the top of St Mary's Church Tower. The first one, dated 1881. On the left, you can see the aqueduct carrying the original water pipes. In the centre, you can see the wherries, and on the right, the original wooden bridge that was curved so as to connect Putney High Street on this side directly to the Fulham High Street on the other. In this second photograph, from 1884, 3 years later, construction of the new bridge has started on the left, while the water supply and the aqueduct had been diverted temporarily onto the left-hand side of the old bridge. In this third one, the completed road bridge, opened in 1886, looks a bit narrow here. You are correct. It was widened to its current size in 1931.
Since all of this time, watermen and lightermen have continued their trade, up and down the river, either in the old trade of carrying passengers. Here is a short film. It depicts 2 Doggett winners in their uniforms rowing a passenger in a waterman's skiff. You could hire a single waterman who would scull you across the river for a penny. Or for longer and maybe faster trips, you would hire 2 men to row you under oars. The fares would range from 2pence to a shilling, depending on distance, a bit like today's taxis. All the fares were laid out in a tariff that was issued by the Waterman's Company. Or in the barge traffic. Or sometimes in more ceremonial tasks, such as rowing the royal barge Gloriana seen here. Also, Doggett's Coat and Badge. That's a race for apprentice watermen. It's the oldest continuously contested race, rowed annually since 1715. Here is a photograph of 20 of the winners of that race, spanning from 1868 to 1904, many of which were Putney men. Here is a photograph of the Waterman's Arms. This pub was very close to the river in Wandsworth, the neighbouring parish to Putney. It's roughly where Wangas or Smuggler's Way waste transfer station is today. Riverside pubs like the Waterman's Arms were often used not only as a watering hole and somewhere to dry out, but an informal labour exchange for fellow watermen to find out if there was any work going and catch up with the news of the day.
Since the time when your education was taken over by the state in 1911, the Thomas Martyn Foundation has continued to assist you foundationers towards your educational needs. The education element may have been taken away, but you still need the equivalent of those caps, coats and shoes in the form of books, computers and other necessities. Some of you now are moving on to higher education, most of which is highly expensive. Your governors have been able to extend the foundation to those of you going on to these relevant courses in the manner which they believed and hoped that Thomas Martyn should have wished. Don't worry, we are not going to make you dance a jig for your money, like this poor beggar seeking alms from a pretty unresponsive, by the look of it, group of parishioners. Those days are over.
These can either be in technical subjects away from the water, such as university, or apprenticeships in arts and crafts, or in the more traditional waterman and lighterman's career on the River Thames.
We trust that this short video has been of interest, even a little bit instructive. As I said earlier, we have put this together as we wanted to have some means of keeping in touch with you